the cup of tea, and the sock. This glitch occurred a couple of years ago. A friend had made me a cup of tea, which wasn't unusual, but he made a point of telling me he'd made it with brown sugar instead of white for some reason. Obviously, I didn't mind, was still thankful for the tea. After I finished it, I was singing into the mug, being goofy, making some kind of weird ancient chant using the echo inside the empty cup. I apologized to my friend for being annoying, and then had to leave the house briefly for an appointment. I got home roughly an hour later and decided to repay Buddy by making another round of tea. I'm English, of course, lol. But we couldn't find my cup anywhere. We searched the apartment high and low, in complete bewilderment that the mug I had used such a short time ago had vanished. However, later on I open up the microwave and there is my mug with half a cup of tea still in it. I tasted it, and it was made with brown sugar. We couldn't believe it. My friend hadn't made me another tea or put my cup in the microwave. I also knew I had definitely finished the tea, because I only ever sing into the mug when it's empty, and that moment had been clearly marked by me apologizing for my weirdness. We were at a loss, but it really did feel like some kind of timeline glitch. I was in a new relationship at the time, but still living with my ex-wife and my buddy, who then got into a relationship with each other whilst I was still living there. It got pretty messy. But another interesting thing happened when me and my new love got together. I stripped next to her bed, but when I came to get dressed, a sock had disappeared. It made no sense, because the other sock was right there on the floor where I'd left it. It never turned up despite turning the room upside down. These two events occurred within a few weeks of each other, but it always kind of felt like I'd been shifted into a different timeline, out of a toxic situation and into something much healthier. Of course, I feel a hit crazy saying that, but the glitches felt like signposts marking the end of one path and the start of another. My sister came home. I'd like to start by saying that my parents' house has a long history of sporadic, strange events. A few years ago, when I still lived there, I was hanging with my mom in her bedroom. We heard my sister coming home. See, she had a routine. 1, park her car. 2, open the steel fence. 3, open and slam the front door. 4, throw her keys into the counter. 5, run into the bathroom. 6, come to my mom's room. We heard it all. I even said, "Ugh, your daughter is here." I was always annoyed by the loudness, and we waited. A few minutes went by, and she didn't come in, so I went to take a look. 1, her dog was waiting, as usual, outside of the bathroom. The light was off, and the door was slightly open. I stood there, didn't hear a sound, so I knocked a few times. No answer. I got worried and opened the door, but she wasn't there. 2, I went to the kitchen. Her keys weren't on the counter. 3, I kept walking. The front door was locked. 4, I went outside. The fence was closed, and no trace of her car. I came back to my mom's room. I don't know how my face looked like, but she immediately asked, "What happened?" I told her, and she called my sister. She was still at work and would be coming home late. The thing is, something similar happened a few weeks ago. My sister now has a daughter, almost 3 years old. They were hanging in the same room and heard my mom coming home. My niece even said, "Grandma," and they waited. My sister did the same as me and called my mom. She hadn't come home. Pens vanished in 10 feet and 2 seconds. Bought my wife a present of a set of nice ballpoint pens, sold enclosed in plastic on a cardboard board backing for hanging rack sale. So a semi-bulky item. It just managed to fit in my shirt pocket, where I also carry my phone. I got home to find my wife cleaning the bathroom and asking for help, so I went up there to pitch in. And while leaned over, cleaning the toilet, I decided to move the phone and pens to a front pants pocket, lest they fall into the yucky water. Did that. A few minutes later, I left the bathroom, walked across the hall into the bedroom, and insert blank space here. A minute after that, I grabbed my phone and noticed the pens weren't with it, nor were they in my pants pocket. They haven't been seen since. They're not in the bathroom or in the bedroom, not in any pocket of any clothing I was wearing that day, or that's in the laundry basket. They're not in any of the bags or boxes in which I keep stuff I'm working on to keep it from piling up and messing up the bedroom. Just gone. I'm gonna have to go out and buy a whole other set of them to give my wife. Further bulletins as warranted, if when they reappear. This is actually somewhat typical, as I am very ADHD and am constantly losing things. But usually they turn up in a few days. The record thus far is a 4-week absence of our TV remote, which turned up only after I had bought, received, and begun using its replacement from Amazon. Turned out the original had gone down the side crack beside the seat of my recliner, spent 4 weeks in the innards of the upholstery, and emerged from a hole that shouldn't exist in the fabric of the bottom rear of the chair. But there isn't any place like that in the bedroom as far as I know, so the pens remain harder to explain. Invisible crunch? Yesterday I was having a conversation with my colleague concerning a piece of paperwork, so we were standing in close proximity to one another as we spoke. During the conversation, she moved towards her desk, and in that moment, I happened to be looking down at her feet. We both heard an audible crunch. It sounded exactly like stepping on a Cheeto puff. Something that is definitely plausible at any given time in our profession. Since I was looking down at the time, I even saw that her foot was impeded from fully stepping down, and that it moved more slowly than a normal step as something was being crushed beneath it. She lifted her foot to see what she had stepped on, and absolutely nothing was there. Completely clean tile floor and nothing on the bottom of her shoe. We both stared at each other in shock for a moment, laughed, and joked that we must both be crazy. She also confirmed that she physically felt something crunching under her shoe at the same time that we heard it. Here's where it gets stranger. I just got a call from a friend, and we were chatting about how our weeks have been so far. I was telling her the story, and she was utterly shocked, because the same exact thing happened to her and a friend yesterday as well. The exact same experience where she witnessed, heard the event, and her friend felt the event. But nothing was there. I am at a complete loss, so I am open to any and all interpretations of how this could be possible. AirPod case that was right next to me vanished in a second. This happened 6 months ago and still bothers me almost every day. I was getting ready to leave the house one day, and I'm using my AirPods. I placed the case on my bed. The bed has dark blue sheets, so I can very easily see the white AirPod case. The bed is made, it's flat. There is no way the case can get lost in the sheets. It's just sitting on top. I am the only person in the room, no pets either. I turn around for literally 1 second to grab my eyeliner, and when I turn back, the case is just gone. I ripped my entire bed apart, even though I know I only saw it sitting right there in that exact spot. I looked through every pillow, every blanket. I even went through my drawer and looked through the pockets of pants I haven't worn in years because I was so confused and desperate to find it. My bed has storage, so it's completely flat to the ground. There is no under my bed that it could have fallen to, if it could even fall in that 1 second. My entire room was in the hallway when I gave up looking. I've washed my sheets and cleaned my floor many times since then, and I still look to see if I can find them when I do, because it still makes me so mad and confused. It was right there. And then it was just vanished from this dimension in 1 second. I didn't believe in any type of glitch before this, and this is the one thing that made me question it. It makes absolutely no sense. There is nothing that could have happened in that 1 second for it to not be there when I turned back around. I still have the actual AirPods. They're sitting and waiting for their vanished home to come back one day. I got new ones since then, but I still kept those in case I ever found the case somehow one day, but I never did. I heard my dad into the future. This happened about 12 years ago when I was around 17, and my little sister was about 7 or 8. She doesn't remember much of it, but I do, mainly because I think about it so often. It's one of those experiences that I can't explain, and for someone as skeptical as me, that's very unsettling. It was summer vacation. and I was babysitting my little sister while both my parents were at work. I have another sister, 2 years younger than me, but she wasn't home on that particular day. We lived on the second floor of an old Chicago townhouse with a front entrance and a back porch that led directly into the kitchen. That day, my little sister and I were both in the living room, me watching TV and her playing some computer game. She was losing and let out a curse word, which at the time she was starting to do more often. She was usually a very well-behaved kid, but my parents were trying to break the habit by putting her in timeout whenever they caught her swearing. So, following their rule, I sent her to sit in the kitchen for 5 minutes. I kept watching TV, completely losing track of time. It wasn't until my show ended that I realized over 40 minutes had gone by. I felt awful as I rushed to the kitchen, ready to apologize for leaving her in there so long. But just as I got close, I heard something I really didn't expect. I heard whistling. It was strange for 2 reasons. First, I had never heard my little sister whistle before, and second, this wasn't just random whistling. It was a tune, a deliberate, steady melody. At first, I felt even worse, thinking I had left her there alone so long that she had managed to teach herself how to whistle. But as I stood there, listening, something started to feel off. The sound didn't seem like it was coming from my sister at all. It sounded older, deeper, familiar in a way. It sounded exactly like my dad. My dad did usually come in through the back door when he got home from work, so for a split second I thought maybe he had gotten home early. But that didn't make sense. He wasn't due back for at least another 3 or 4 hours. Still, the resemblance was uncanny. The pitch, the rhythm, the way the notes lingered for just a second too long. It was his whistle. I started walking slower and started to get annoyed because I knew once my sister told him how long I'd left her alone in there for, I'd probably be in trouble. I slowly poked my head in expecting to see both of them, but instead, I found my sister, alone and completely knocked out, head resting on her arms, fast asleep. But the whistling was still going on. The sound was right there, filling the room. It wasn't coming from my sister. It wasn't coming from outside. It was just there. I don't remember how long I stood there, listening, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. Eventually, I ran to the back door, yanking it open, expecting to see someone standing outside. No one was there. I ran to the windows, looking down, looking around. Nothing. But the entire time, that damn whistling never stopped. It was still in the kitchen, even as I stepped out onto the porch, even as I backed away. It wasn't following me. It was staying in the room, hit right where I had left my sleeping sister. I panicked. I grabbed my sister, barely waking her up as I carried her out of the house and ran straight to my friend's place down the street. I waited there until my mom got home. When I told her what had happened, she brushed it off. She barely reacted, didn't seem to care, and honestly, that made me feel even crazier. So I just stopped talking about it. I never told my dad or my other sister. But here's the part that still makes my stomach drop whenever I think about it. A few days later, when my dad did come home from work, he walked in through the back door, and he was whistling the exact same tune I had heard in the kitchen days before. The exact same one. I don't have an explanation. I've thought about every possible logical answer, but nothing fits. It wasn't an echo, it wasn't someone outside, and it definitely wasn't my sister. I've never told anyone this story since, but I still think about it all the time. Grocery shopping time glitches. The reason why I'm stopping to write this is I experienced a couple of time glitches this morning when at the grocery store. The first one happened when I passed an employee walking slowly heading to the front while I was heading to the back. It was about halfway when we passed each other, and I didn't stop and came out of the aisle to see the same employee walking out from the back when I just passed her going down the aisle. Later, when I was checking out and leaving the checkout area, a girl who looked strange was just starting to check out at the self-checkout behind me as I was leaving the store. When I am halfway down the front store aisle to the exit, and she's already exiting, way ahead of me. Spent most of today trying to explain it away, and I've experienced time glitches before, but they weren't so obvious as the ones experienced today. I'm posting just in case there were other obvious stories that happened today. Jacket took a trip. Last summer I took my family on a cruise to Bermuda. I remember packing and looking at the weather. I packed a bunch of shorts and tees, but also 2 pair of nice pants and some collared shirts, so my wife and I could do a nice dinner one night while my parents watched our 3-year-old. This was not my first cruise, so I knew I may need a light jacket for at night on the deck. I packed my quarter-zip pullover. It's from a fundraiser golf outing my fraternity had a few years ago. There's maybe 60 in existence that are exactly like it. I packed it specifically over any other pullover because I've been lucky to run into fraternity brothers from chapters all over the country who spot my letters. I figured, why not on a cruise? We left Saturday afternoon for Manhattan. My wife and I picked Monday night to have our date, as it was the last night before we made it to Bermuda, and we wanted to make sure we didn't have reservations on other nights in case we were enjoying Bermuda and couldn't make it to the boat in time. It was cooler out that night, so after getting my nice pants and shirt on, I put my pullover on before we left for dinner. We walked the ship a little, then decided to get our photos taken. I took my jacket off and placed it on a chair in the photo studio. My wife placed her clutch on top. When we were done, we grabbed our stuff and went to the restaurant. I put my jacket on the back of my chair and we enjoyed our dinner. Once done, we headed back to our room where my parents had just put our son to sleep. We had drinks we planned to enjoy on our balcony. This is when I realized I didn't have my jacket. I went back to the restaurant, which was closing, and asked if anyone turned a jacket in. I showed them a picture of it and they said no, but to check the lost and found at guest services. I checked with guest services and they didn't have it either. I figured maybe it'll show up in a day or two. We went about our cruise. I checked back on Wednesday night and Friday before we packed up. We dug through all of our laundry and suitcases, and it was simply gone. I also didn't have any other jackets, so it wasn't just like a mistake that I brought a different one. I also asked my parents and sister and her husband if they saw it, and the answer was, again, no. I was kind of pissed because I thought someone took this jacket that, unless they were in my fraternity, would mean nothing to them. We got home, unpacked, and did our laundry. It was still nowhere to be found. About 4 months later, I was packing for a work trip, and I knew I'd need a pullover. So in packing, I went to the area in our closet where I keep my pullovers. And there it was, hanging like it never left. I talked to my wife as we just got back from a different beach trip where I complained I didn't have my pullover. And here it was. I asked her if she saw it come back from the cruise, and she swore no. She would have said something because she knew how upset I was. She also said she didn't see it go to the beach either, as at that point, it was still gone. I jumped ahead of route on my work today, ended up on the next road without turning. There I am house sitting and have been for the past week. I drove to work this morning, but I know this route very well despite being back roads. I have no need for Google Maps to get there. It was 5:43 in the morning when I left, and I own a pet sitting business, so I don't need to shower and get ready for early morning visits. I can just throw on clothes and go. So, albeit I was still getting with the program mentally, I turned onto the first side street off the main road for my route. This side street is about a mile long. It's dark out, so I double-checked the street sign. It's the correct road. I traveled down it for a while. It's dark out and there is snow on the ground, so granted, things look different. But I start thinking there should be houses by now, and I've definitely driven further than a mile. I see a car approaching behind me in my rear view, so I pull over to turn on Google Maps. It tells me point 2 up the road. I turn left on a road that I am familiar with, as it is part of my route of back roads, but not the road I am expecting to be next. Also, it's definitely not the correct direction I should be turning next. Thinking it's early morning and I'm just confused, I get back on the road, and when I get to the end of the road and have to turn left or right, I realize somehow I didn't ever come to the end of that first side road and turn right. I somehow skipped ahead to the next road and have to turn left. I know exactly where I am at this point. Obvious landmark and street sign, and all the roads and landmarks after that are as norm. That first side street I took off the main road is just woods until the last quarter mile, when there are very recognizable houses, and then I turn right. That never happened. I kept going on, and when I felt lost and confused and checked maps, I was on the road. I would have had to have turned right on after that first side street, and quite a ways down it. So logically, I know it was early morning, and I do sometimes zone out when I drive. But if I zone out, I tend to miss turns. I was looking for my turn the whole time. I paid attention to the clock when I got to my next client's house. I was 2 to 3 min past arrival time. I had pulled over and checked the map, so that tracks. No missing time there. I decay. So strange. Nothing like this has ever happened before. I hope I explained it well enough. It's nothing exciting but bizarre because I know I never turned off that first side street. I may not have been fully alert, but I was looking for the landmarks before my turn and they never appeared. The vanishing key? Hey y'all, I finally got a story to post here after lurking for a while. So I work for a company that test drives cars, and although I legally can't tell you what I was driving at the time, I can say that it uses a key card instead of an actual key to lock, unlock, and drive the vehicle. About a month ago, I'm finishing up my paperwork after getting back into the lot at the end of my shift. After I've checked to make sure I've finished everything, I grab my paperwork, the key, and my personal belongings. For context, I was wearing a thin gray coat zipped up and then a proper winter coat over top that was unzipped. I always keep my personal keys and wallet in the left pocket of the winter coat and my phone in my right pocket. As a result, work keys go into the left pocket. This night, I got out of the car and then locked it. I then fumbled putting it into my pocket, but picked it up off of the snow and shook it a bit to get some snow off and just shoved it into my right pocket. I left my hand in there because it was a bitterly cold night, well below 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and made the short walk to the building. I get inside, finish the last of my paperwork, and walk over to one of my bosses who was sitting on a chair underneath the key rack. He begins checking over my paperwork, and I take the car key out of my pocket and hang it up. I distinctly remember doing this and the way the melting snow shifted in the protective plastic case as I hung it up. My boss finishes checking my paperwork, tells me I'm all good, and I put the papers onto the paper tray, finish my time card, put that and my clipboard away, and grab my stuff and leave, making sure to glance at the key rack to double check that I had put the key away, and it was there. I get back to my dorm and do my usual after-work routine of feeding the cat, putting my keys and wallet on the bedside table, hanging up my winter coat on a rack on the closet, hanging the other coat up on one of the posts at the foot of my bed, plugging in my phone, and unpacking my small personal bag. I then head into my shared bathroom to use it and take a shower, but I get a call just before heading into the shower. I grab my phone and see it's from my boss, who asks if I hung up the key, and I tell him the truth. Yes, I did. He tells me it's not there. I rifle through my winter coat pockets real quick, but find no key, and I tell him that. He sounds super confused and says that he'll keep looking back at base, and for me to keep looking around my dorm. After my shower, I find that I have gotten a text from my other boss saying that she has been informed that I have lost a key and that I need to find it before my next work shift. I quickly type back that I hung it up and 100% do not have it. Still, I rifle through the pockets of both my jackets. I check my pants pocket, my bag, do a quick sweep of my small dorm room, and find absolutely no key. It's around 4 a.m. at this point, so I head to bed. I wake up around 1 or 2 p.m. to another text from my boss saying that I in fact did not hang up the key and that I need to find it. Cue more pocket searches, bag searches, clothes searches, and once again no key. I check the parking lot as I'm walking to my car for my shift, and check my car but find nothing. At work, myself and the shift lead both swept the driver's room and the parking lot, both before and after everyone else left in their cars, and got the manufacturers to unlock the car for them, and checked there, despite the fact that you can't lock the car from the outside without a key. I was assigned that same car, and left after 2 hours since I couldn't drive that night. The next day, my dad visited me at my dorm and helped search my dorm and my car, but again, no key. I worked again that night and was assigned a different car. The key for the other one had not been found. It's been a month, and I have used those coats and the pockets multiple times. The clothes I wore have been washed and reworn, my bag has been cleaned out, and the driver's room at work is used daily, and multiple people have been searching for that damn key. I know I hung up that key that night. I know that at least one of my bosses believes me on that point. I haven't been punished, thankfully. Occasionally, someone will ask me if the key has turned up, and all I can do is shrug my shoulders and say that no, I haven't found it. The vehicle was down for a week until a new key arrived from the manufacturer. To this day, I have no idea what happened to that thing. Another key to a different car, but the same make and model, also disappeared under mysterious circumstances a week ago, and the bosses are starting to get a bit worried. It waits to be seen if another key will dematerialize into the ether or not, but my coworkers and I are joking that they got taken by the fairies. Also, you need a passcode to get into the building, and all doors chime when they are opened. The front door is right next to the office that my boss would have been in if someone came inside. The back door opens into a parking lot surrounded by a barbed wire fence with a sliding gate that also requires a passcode and beeps when opened and closed. Plus, a window from the office looks out onto the area where a vehicle or person would be to type in the passcode. All of this to say, the keys being stolen are basically impossible. A coworker would also have no reason to steal a key except out of spite, but also, I was the last one out that night. Nobody else came in or out the night it vanished. The boss that was there that night is the one who believes that I hung it up also. We are all so confused, and I'm just glad that I didn't get into trouble. This will probably get filed into my mind as a life is strange thing, and just become something that I randomly think about and just shrug my shoulders at. But still, where in the hell did those keys go? Devil's Den is well named. My girlfriend Kay and I were visiting a friend in Arkansas. We'd never been in the state before, and looking forward to a fun road trip. Of course, we got lost and stopped at the Piggly Wiggly to get directions. Some guy told us to take a shortcut through Devil's Den. It wriggled around, but it was the best way to find the highway. We drive on and take the turn he told us to, and then things got weird. I swear we passed the visitor center first. Kay swears it was last. We are both completely certain. But anyway, the road started flat and began to incline gradually. Then it got narrower, and oh boy, narrow. Only room for one car and not a big one. The road climbed up and up, and there were drop-offs, not like little drop-offs, think Grand Canyon. As far as we could see, red rock formations, mountains, some towering over us. It was like a canyon below us of nothing but red rock formations. The road was still there. It was cracked and had weeds growing through it, and it looked like no one had driven on it for a long, long time. Think the show Life Without People. Kay was white-knuckling the steering wheel, and I was hanging on to the side of the car. For some reason, I didn't even reach for the camera. I was too freaked to move. She could only drive about 10 miles per hour because of the hairpin turns. It was insane. We were both terrified. Kay actually wanted to leave the car and walk, but I was more worried to leave the car. I know it's crazy, but it felt like a pterodactyl was going to swoop down or something worse. We don't know how long we drove on this road. There were no other cars, no buildings, no animals, no trees, no nothing but us and the red rock on the scary little road. Some of these mountains were huge, just tremendous. Eventually the road began to even out. The red rocks were gone. It was trees and grass, and then we saw a farmhouse with horses, then Kay swears, the visitor center to Devil's Den. We pulled into the parking lot to get our shit together. The sun was sinking fast, and Kay was worried about driving if there were any more horrible scenic roads like that one. We drove the rest of the way, though, and made it to our friend's house before it was totally dark. We wanted to show pictures of this amazing scenic red rock in Devil's Den, so we looked it up and couldn't find any pictures of it. Odd. Kay called the Devil's Den Visitor Center and asked about it. The ranger said they have no rock formations or giant mountains or anything like that there. He was so puzzled, he said, "Let me get back to you," and drove around looking for this Red Rock Canyon. Called us back and said nothing like that existed there. It just wasn't possible. We've researched and researched, Google and books, and there is nothing even resembling that around there. It resembled Arizona, but even that wasn't quite right for what we saw. It's like what we saw just isn't here. Okay, so where were we? When were we? What was that about?